Hi, and welcome to That's My Purse Pod, the podcast all about King of the Hill. I'm Jason.
And I'm Jimmy.
So, Jimmy, the question I always ask, how was your past week?
This past week was pretty chill, didn't do much. I am on the hunt for a new board game. I actually found a great board game for us to play. I think you're going to come down and visit Texas soon, or eventually you will, right?
Yeah, in about a month and a half or so.
The board game I found is a Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood board game.
Okay. I don't think I've ever heard of it, but now you've got my attention.
I never heard of it either, but I was just walking around the little board game shop we have here in Austin, and I saw it, and I was like, I need this in my life. So I think when you come visit, I'll try to set up a board game night with some of my friends here, and we can all play.
Nice. I don't know if they'll be here yet, but you just triggered a memory on me. So there was a Kickstarter campaign, I don't know, a year ago, a little over a year ago, that I participated in to get Avatar Legends, the role playing game. It's like a tabletop role playing game. That is actually licensed, so you get to play in the world of Avatar. And I think they're going to start shipping like either next month or early this month, or well, not early this month. The month's almost over, so either like sometime like I think middle October is when it's going to ship. I could be wrong.
Nice, man. Do you already? How are you gonna play? Do you have a group over there you're gonna play with, or what are you gonna do?
I didn't get that far into the planning when I put the Kickstarter in because it just looked so cool, and I was like, I'll get it. And then I was like, once I get it, I'll just figure it out then.
Oh, if you do it online, let me know. I definitely would like to play. And if you are looking for one, I actually have a Power Rangers one that I'm trying to put a group together for.
Nice.
So, um, the main selling point for me to get the Power Ranger one was the gaming company's Renegade Gaming Studio, and I was recently at a Power Ranger convention that the company was at, and I was talking to one of the developers, and that studio makes three other tabletop role playing games. They do G.I. Joe, Transformers, and My Little Pony. And the cool thing is you can mix and match your characters because it's all the same system of play. So if you had friends that play Transformers, they could play in your Power Ranger world and vice versa. So I thought that was really cool.
That's I feel like that's like every kid's low level dream is that they get to like, when you're playing with toys or whatever when you're in elementary school, and you just you throw out like all the toys that you have, like even if it's not they're not even from like the same intellectual property, so you'll be playing with like Gundams, but also with trolls and stuff, and you just create this magical world.
Yeah, I mean, we never worried about licensing as children.
Of course not. We had our own MCU way back in the day before Marvel ever did.
Yeah, so I'm excited to play some RPG stuff. So if you're doing it online, let me know. I definitely want to play. Do you think you'll be the DM or I guess GM?
Yeah, it's been a long, long time since I've played a tabletop game, so I feel like I'm gonna have to play catch up on it, or like refresh myself on how to do it. But after I figure out the rules, I'll be fine. It looks like so in this game you get to play in one of five eras. Yes, I know this isn't an Avatar podcast, but I have a strong feeling that the members of the King of the Hill fandom, there's probably a decent crossover with the Avatar fandom. You have Kyoshi era, Roku era, the Hundred Year War era, the Aang era, and Korra's era.
Okay, I'm going to ask a stupid question, but I think I know the answer to it. The 100-Year War, isn't that when there's no Avatar?
Yeah,
So you play in a world where there's no Avatar. You could if you
pretty
wanted to.
much.
Interesting.
Yeah, because that's where Aang is frozen
Frozen.
under the ocean. Yeah, so so there's not he's not. dead, because if he dies, then he gets reincarnated into the
Mm.
next cycle or something. So since he's alive, he's just kind of hanging out under the ocean, and the the Fire Nation's looking for the Avatar, but was never able to find him because he was in an iceberg under the ocean.
That is really cool. I knew about the 4 Avatar eras you could live in. I didn't know you could live in the no Avatar era.
Yep. I mean, technically there was an Avatar then. It just he was indisposed.
I guess you're technically living in Aang era. Like
Mm-hmm.
the man, that's interesting. Oh man, do you? I wonder if they'll do other avatars like Juan from like the first Avatar ever.
Maybe they could,
Man, now I'm really
but
that's exciting.
yeah, yeah. Nang's gonna. I mean, I don't know. I could go on and on and on about Avatar, so I won't until we start an Avatar podcast. But let's ask. But I'll ask a quick question before we get into a big fight, or a quick question that might start a big fight. Which Avatar series did you like better, The Last Airbender or Legend of Korra?
My favorite, the one I'll always rewatch is Avatar: The Last Airbender. I love it. I think it's a great story. Um, not to say that Korra isn't great. It did take me 2 watch throughs to like Legend of Korra, but I don't know. I think Aang's a I don't know. I feel like I don't want to make anyone upset, but in my opinion, Aang is the better Avatar.
See, I think that The Last Airbender is the better series, but
Oh.
Korra is the better Avatar. But it's also hard to compare because she technically has at least 4 years on Aang, like in terms of age and training, and also she got training really early too, or it's presumed that she got training really early compared to Aang. Um, so it's hard to compare Aang and his show and Korra and her show just because of those differences there. But
I
if we
don't
were to
know.
look at like their feats as Avatar, Korra definitely had more interesting feats as an Avatar than Aang ever did.
Well, I mean, it's all that spirit world stuff, right? Are you kind of like,
Well, I mean, she survived being poisoned, um, and with the mercury or whatever, and also, yeah, her ability to spirit bend and everything like that, something we don't really see Aang do much of. So she created a whole new. Sorry, I'm spoiling a, I don't know, at least an 8-year-old series or something. But and then she actually creates a third spirit portal, so she's technically more powerful than Aang is.
I will say, I think Korra has the advantage. Not that this Avatar podcast, but Korra has the advantage that learning how to bend was readily available to her as Avatar, and Aang had to kind
That's
of just
true.
like makeshift his way through it, and
That's true.
do it in secrecy.
Yeah, though it was also a different world too. Some people argue that like because you notice, and yes, this is slowly becoming an Avatar podcast. You notice, like in the Korra world, where they're becoming industrialized and stuff, the Avatar or the bending fighting, not just of the Avatar but of the Benders, has changed substantially because since they're not in nature, they don't have access to the same things. They, they're more precise. Like you notice the water benders don't have as much water readily available, so when they do their attacks, they do really precise ones to ensure that they're not using too much water.
Yeah, I wonder if it's gonna be. Have you ever seen the movie Onward, the Pixar movie Onward?
I have not. I need to.
Well, I'm not no spoiler, but Onward is a very magical world. Like there's magical creatures, and they have like
Mm-hmm.
magic exists in the beginning. but people forgot how to do magic because it was easier just to like turn on a light switch once they like invented electricity, and then the ways of magic kind of just were obsolete. I wonder if the Avatar world would be like that too, where like bending would
Maybe.
become less of a thing since like we have more modern ways of doing like steam power and all that.
Well, I mean, just like but the difference between The Last Airbender and Legend of Korra, in The Last Airbender, lightning bending was done by like only, I think we only ever see three benders do that, and they're all part of the royal family, the Fire Nation. But then in Legend of Korra, like even blue collar workers are able to lightning bend, so it becomes so commoditized and common use. Same thing with metal bending. You know, Toph was the only metal bender in the original Avatar, and then like there's a whole city dedicated to training metal bending in the later episodes, or
Yeah,
in Korra.
yeah, and I'm sure we'll see more like lava bending and stuff like that. You know, because that
Yep.
the new kinds of bending we see in Korra, we
Hmm.
got a third series.
There is a fan series online, and I guess the creators don't really care because they haven't like sent a cease or desist or anything like that. But it's like the Legend of Kenji or something, which is a continuation after Korra, and it's like a fan comic book series. It's actually really well done. It's not considered canon, but the Avatar Studios seem to be just totally fine with them making it.
Hmm. Well, I mean, oh well, would you want a new Avatar season series?
There might be one. I mean, so like in the same way that Marvel has Marvel Studios or whatever, Nickelodeon established a few years ago an Avatar studio, and they're going to make a bunch of IP around Avatar. So we already had some things like the Kyoshi books and stuff, but it looks like they're going to try to make some new shows and new comics and everything. So, not well, if they ever get the live action version going.
Yeah, I always feel like they're going back to the well. You know, they're like everyone loves Aang, so let's go back to the Aang well instead of think. Man, this looks really good. The Legend of Genji. Like, I'm just cruising through their website, but the artwork looks good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and well, I think that's just a thing now. Like a lot of studios, not just in terms of TV or whatever, but just a lot of studios are milking nostalgia and whatnot to keep to keep the money going. Like I don't know if you caught it, but the Last of Us TV trailer that dropped today.
Oh, was that today?
Uh, yeah, it dropped today. But like the whole, I don't know. To me, I'm not a fan of the idea because first you had like the original Last of Us game, great. Then there was a PS4 remaster. Now they're doing an entire remake of it and doing it like part one, part two on the PlayStation 5. And then they're also doing a TV series that follows the essentially the story of the game. So it's like they're just like, we're gonna beat this horse to death.
It looked good though. I did see the trailer. I thought it came out a while ago, but
Yeah,
I'll watch it.
I don't know. I might watch it. There's very few exceptions to the rule, but my general rule is that video games, just they do a terrible job when you try to translate them into another medium, like when you try to make them a movie out of them or a TV show or something, because I mean, it's just different experiences. You're supposed to play and explore and stuff with video games, and you're supposed to kind of passively watch TV shows and stuff. So they're different mediums, different experiences, and I don't think it translates over well.
Yeah, I haven't really seen a really good video game to like live action adaptation in a long time. I can't even think of one
Well, you know
that.
what the highest grossing one of all time is, right?
Oh,
Sonic the Hedgehog.
oh. Mm, I mean, Okay, I guess because that's geared towards children, though. You feel like that's cheating?
I don't know. Like, so I originally saw the first Sonic the Hedgehog, and I was originally just going to hate watch it because I was like, "There's no way it's going to be a good movie." Video game movies suck. Sonic the Hedgehog hasn't had like a good video game in 20 years. The movie's not. I actually wound up enjoying the movie.
Oh, maybe I'll give it a shot. I've only seen bits and pieces of it.
Yeah, I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the sequel. And it looks like there's going to be a third one, but I guess without Jim Carrey's because Jim Carrey claimed he's retiring from acting. But who knows?
I thought Knuckles was getting a spin-off too.
Oh, maybe I didn't. I don't know.
Hmm. Well, I hope The Last of Us is good. I'm really rooting for Pedro Pascal's career. I don't know why, but I just want him to succeed.
Has he? No, I guess he's done a few things. I was gonna say he's done like
Mandalorian.
maybe TV's just where he's meant to be because he seems to do really well on TV shows and not so great in movies. But I don't know.
He was in that movie that I wanted to see that I never saw. That one with Nicolas Cage, where Nicolas Cage plays himself.
No idea.
Oh man, no, I have to.
Unbearable weight of massive talent. Maybe
Yes. Whenever you get the chance, watch the trailer.
I will.
It's hilarious. Like Nicolas Cage plays Nicolas Cage, which is in itself amazing. But no one else plays themselves, so
Nice.
it's
Yeah, I think like with
interesting.
Narcos and The Mandalorian and stuff, he's done
Yeah, television.
way
That's
better in television. That just might, yeah, maybe that's just his thing.
Has he hosted Saturday Night Live?
I don't think so.
I wouldn't mind seeing him host.
Yeah, I think there's just some people who can't make the jump from movie to TV properly, but you know that happens. Uh, Hank Hill probably doesn't care either which way, so why don't we talk a little bit about him?
Yes,
But yeah, so this episode is going to be Yard She Blows, which I know is one of your favorites of all time.
it is. And after the rewatch, uh, I think I like it for all the wrong reasons, but this is one I can watch over and over again. I mean, spoilers for an episode, but it made me want to collect lawn gnomes.
You should. I do like the episode. It's not one of my favorites. I will say, like, the episode starts, like, the very first thing said in the episode is one of my favorite quotes of all time. So that is definitely a win for the episode. But yeah, it's a nice one. It's season 9, so it's a later episode, episode 4. And why don't we just jump into it? So we're looking outside of the Hill House, and Hank's doing what Hank does. He's mowing the lawn and he's cleaning out the basket and everything. And he says one of my favorite quotes of all time: "Why would anyone do drugs when they can just mow a lawn?" Peggy comes out and she's like, "Oh, I'm out of Gatorade, but I just took some lemonade and put in some of Bobby's chewable vitamins. We can call it Lemonadeorade." Some neighbors are walking by, kind of, doing their little neighborhood walk that people do. And they say, hey, we've walked all over the neighborhood. We've seen, oh, so many houses, and yours is definitely the best. What are your secrets to such the green grass? And Hank wants to say something, but then, of course, Peggy jumps in, being Peggy, but then she doesn't really have an answer. She's just like, oh, well, it's just that, well, we water it. And then Hank says, actually, it's more complicated than that. And he talks about like things such as, the fertilizer composition and everything. And then they talk about the attention to detail that Hank has with like the door hinges and the knocker and stuff. It's like, oh yeah, that stuff just like complements itself perfectly. And so Peggy starts to feel bad because pretty much everything that everybody's complimenting the house about was Hank's contribution, not Peggy's. So Peggy brings them into the house and shows them the curtains because she picked out the curtains, and she's like, "Feel these curtains and tell me they're not real velvet." And then the two guys are like, the couple, they're just like, looking at each other, kind of crazy. Like, then she's like, "Oh, I bought these drapes the day John Lennon was shot." And of course, they just leave.
I thought that was gonna be your favorite quote. I say that all the time. When anything's going wrong, I'm like, "Oh, I got this the day John Lennon was shot." Makes it all better.
Yeah. Later in the day, it's bedtime. They're getting ready to go to bed. Well, as you do at bedtime. And Peggy was upset that she really had nothing to do with the house's curb appeal. Like what everybody sees in the house, or what everybody sees when they walk by the house or drive by the house, or however, is all Hank's contribution, not Peggy's. And she's upset. So she's like, she wants to get more involved in the front yard, which Hank is not thrilled about because, that's his project. That's his baby. He's worked so hard on it. And Peggy's not exactly the best at that stuff, but he tries to detract or defer her to something else, and it's like, hey, how about we repaint the kitchen? You can use any color of white that you want. Sky's the limit. Eggshell, pearl, and but Peggy's like, no, this is the curb appeal. Like what's outside makes the house. It shows me, or it shows us to the rest of the world, and I want to be part of that. And Hank's like, I guess you could plant a few flowers under the window. In the alley, kind of, I guess you can think of it as a B story, but not really. You see that Joseph is driving a mini bike around. He apparently won it off of Dale in a poker game, and Hank's like, "That's not street legal." And then Dale yells, "Okay, Joseph, get off the street!" And he's like, "Not on the lawns." He's like, "Guys, you don't want him to play on the streets. You don't want him to ride on the lawns. So you and your arbitrary rules." Peggy returns from the Megalomart having bought just a ton of flowers. Like she's just, the whole old saying, like throw something at the wall and sees what sticks. That's pretty much what she's doing here. She is buying all the flowers until she can figure out what she wants. Hank is, trying to be supportive, but then Dale's like, if your wife wants to screw things up, she should stick to Bobby. And then Hank just kind of under his breath says, please don't ruin my yard. uh I don't know, it's just funny, the poor the vote of the lack of confidence everyone has in Peggy's ability to plant stuff.
I do think so. When I first watched this, I thought like this was her first attempt at planning things. But the way they talk about it, because Boomhauer goes off on like he names a few flowers that like are screaming for help that Peggy has planted. So I feel like she's been
Hmm.
at this for maybe a couple of weeks or a month.
That's kind of my guess, or my guess is maybe she's tried in the past and it failed, and she gave up, and now she's trying again. So that's why everybody's like, oh, she's going to screw up again because she screwed up before.
I don't know. I don't think Hank would have let her try a second time. Like he would have brought it up for sure. Hank's like one of those people that would have brought it up. Like, remember that time?
True. But I think he also, that's why he was trying to defer her to, like, oh, how about we paint the house instead, or something like that, because he was so nervous about, like, the idea of her doing the lawn. And so he's thinking, okay, well, maybe if I can give her some other pet project, she'll be super happy and leave the lawn alone.
Hmm. I did enjoy though the way she says that it's like the lawn is like your thing, but it should be our thing. I was like, oh, that was very sweet, and it
Yeah,
did
I
win
mean,
Hank over when she said that.
it is both their houses, so what can we say? I don't know. We don't know if this is a day later. I mean, it's got to be sometime. It's not like, unless Peggy is like that bad that she can kill flowers in like a day. Some time has passed, and all the flowers that she's planted underneath the windows and alongside the house are dead. And they're just like, "Oh, Bill no longer has the worst lawn in Ireland," and uh, Peggy's feeling bad. And then, of course, the little B plot comes by. Joseph is riding around wearing one of Dale's helmets, and Joseph is yelled at. Dale's like, "That is not a toy." And he walks up, and Dale just takes away the Nazi helmet that he was wearing. He's like, "You're going to dent it." He's like, "I crashed into a pole." And then he's just, Dale's just upset, but then lets him go lets him continue to go and tells him to steer with his feet. As Dale walks away in the background, you can hear a crash. Peggy is really upset that she can't make this work. And then, of course, the Super Nuisance phones have to come out to make things worse. Min's like, oh, you should listen to Hank. If there's one thing Brillo headed hillbilly knows is how to farm. And then Con makes like Grim Reaper jokes. And at one point, Peggy touches Hank's arm, and Con jokes like, oh, amputate, you're going to die. They go to the Megalo Mart to buy some more flowers. And Peggy is like, hey, do you have anything that can survive overwatering, inadequate fertilization, and overzealous pruning? And they're like, yeah, they're called weeds. And Peggy's like, great, can I get. And then she kind of catches on the joke, and then she gets mad and starts attacking him, like, oh, you $5 an hour, pimple faced, Luann's with her and just like, oh, just give us some impatience. And they take them and walk away. And Peggy's, not happy with all this. And the guy's a little smug. They're driving home and they pass by an estate sale. And Luann's like, dead people have tons of clothes they don't wear anymore. So they stop by there. Uh, Peggy walks around and looks at the flowers, compliments the morning glories. And then, she gets her eye on something and she's like, oh, what is that? And it's like, oh, that's a Winklebottom. It's imported from Germany. She's like, how much do you want for that? We get home and she puts it into the ground, and Joseph almost hits a UPS truck, or I guess the King of the Hill equivalent of a UPS truck. And Hank sees Winklebottom and realizes that it's a garden gnome, and naturally Hank is not happy, even though Bobby, without any surprise, loves it.
Doesn't Bobby try to name him? Bobby tries to name it something else, and then that's when Peggy's
Yeah,
like,
he tries to give it like a more fantasy name, like what you'd hear in Lord of the Rings or something. But then she's like, "No, his name is Winklebottom."
I always want to call him Winklevoss. I know that's the like twins from Facebook, but I don't know why. I do love. Now I want to call him Winklevoss. Winklevoss, right? No, that's not right.
Winklebottom.
Winklebottom. Oh my gosh, I'm never gonna get this right. I do enjoy Winklebottom. I'm surprised though that lady let it go, knowing what we know now in the future.
Maybe she didn't care. Like maybe it was an estate sale, so maybe it was like her mother's or her great aunts or whoever it was who died, and she's just like, okay, whatever. If you want to pay for it.
Have you ever been to an estate sale?
Not in a long time, but when we were younger, we would go every once in a while on Saturdays because you can sometimes get some really good stuff where they're just like trying to liquidate it.
Oh man, I've never been to one. I want to go. I've been to garage sales. I assume they're very similar, except more stuff.
They are very similar.
But no
They are
lawn
pretty much the
gnomes.
exact same thing. It's just the types of stuff they sell. Whereas garage sales usually tend to be stuff they're just trying to get rid of so that they can buy more stuff. Whereas estate sales, same basic idea, but it's more like the person died, so they have no use for it anymore. So it could be stuff that's in perfectly good condition, but they're just trying to get rid of it.
Hmm.
But yeah, they get this gnome out of the estate sale, and Hank is not happy, which I guess makes sense. Hank's just not that kind of guy, and the guys are out there and they're making fun of Hank and they're insulting Hank and the gnome, and they're kind of in a sing-songy way saying, "Oh, Hank likes the gnome," and then Hank's working on the gutters and is trying to ignore them, but they just keep poking at him and poking at him and poking at him verbally, and then Hank just gets off the ladder and threatens to kick their ass, which is kind of fun. He's mowing the lawn and he sees the mailman come up, and so Hank just like dashes to the house so that he can stand in front of Winklebottom and block the view of him. And like as the mailman moves, Hank moves so that that he's not visualized. And Peggy's inside. She looks outside and notices what Hank's doing. So she comes out and she's upset. And Hank's like, "Oh, they're saying nasty things about the house. Like the FedEx guy called the house the one with the gnome out front." And then Peggy just thinks, "Oh well, Hank's jealous because now like people are paying attention to something else about the house that's not his lawn." there's a jogger who runs by who's like the best way to describe her is like a Kathy. I think I've heard the term before used to describe like I guess if you know the Kathy comics, just think of like that, but if like an actual person, I guess. But she's running by and she's like an expert on like gnome lore and all of that and like the gnome manufacturing. It's like, oh, that's a Winklebottom and some constructive criticism here. You need to make him face north so he can get some moss for his gnome tea. And there's a whole lore and internet community that I could introduce you to. And Peggy's, drawn in by this, but Hank's just like, no.
I haven't thought of Kathy in a long time. Do you remember? Kathy was one of my favorite characters on SNL.
Yes.
I
Was
forgot
it
who.
Andy Samberg who did it?
Maybe. Oh man, that's great memories. I also I relate to this Kathy person that we're calling. Like, anytime I see someone slightly interested in something I'm interested in, I have to be like, and now we must talk about this in length.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I don't know. I guess sometimes I could be that way too. If I see somebody who if I there's some major things that I like that a lot of people are into, such as Avatar and whatnot. But there's also some like underground things that I'm into that only like there's a small cult community almost that likes it. And anytime I run into them, I'm like, oh hey, we like the same stuff. Awesome.
Yeah, yeah, especially those niche things. And you're like, oh, I found someone else who loves this. Finally, I get to talk about all the fun facts I've learned. I feel like this lady felt that way as soon as she was jogging across the street, but she must be like in the neighborhood.
That's true. I mean, Arlen's not that big of a town, I don't think, but yeah, she must live somewhere nearby because she looks like she's also kind of a yeah, like a light jogger. Like she's not a marathoner or anything, so I'm not expecting that she's going to be running 20 miles across town or something. So she must be living nearby somewhere, maybe two neighborhoods over or something.
Mm.
Breakfast time, they're just chatting, Bobby and Peggy's talking about how garden gnomes turn to stone when the daylight hits them, and Bobby's like, "Oh, we should leave Winklebottom, a snack plate so that he can eat when he goes out at night." And Peggy's like, "Oh no, they only eat mushrooms and stuff." And Hank's just not happy because, well, Hank's Hank. He just doesn't like any of this fantasy stuff and whatnot. He's like, "Oh, I want everybody to be normal or what he considers normal." So
Well, Bobby just doesn't say a snack plate. Doesn't he want to leave him a fruit pie?
yeah, that's right. He does want to leave him fruit pie.
I love. Okay, speaking of things people want to talk about, I, I don't eat them all the time because they're really bad for you. They're like probably the worst thing for you. But fruit pies are so
Mm-hmm.
good. I love a fruit pie, and anytime I see Bobby eat a fruit pie, I'm like, that's just one of the many reasons I love King of the Hill, and I love that he wants to leave a little fruit pie for Winklebottom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fruit pies are like just a big thing of Bobby's.
Is that a
Bobby
Texas
likes
thing?
playing with. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's Texas specific, but
Like
it's
a Southern
definitely a
thing?
Southern thing.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know that it's specifically Texas,
When you
but I do
come
know it's
visit,
like
I'll
a
send you
Southern thing.
back with a lot of fruit pies. You can give them to your friends.
I should. I know one thing that I do whenever I bring somebody to Texas, especially Austin, is we go to Quacks. And well, at least when I lived in Austin, I don't know if I'd still do it now, but go to Quacks and get a pecan pie
Like a whole pie?
or maybe a slice. Like, well, yeah, a whole pie. It's not just for me. It's like for the guests who are coming from Austin
You're
or
like,
coming
each of
to
us gets
Austin.
our own pecan pie.
Yep.
I would
Uh,
appreciate that. I would be like, okay, we're doing this. That's and we just all sit
I
there and eat
mean,
our pecan pies.
yeah, or eat it over the course of a week or something like that. I don't know.
Pecan pie is the best pie, though.
It is. So Bobby is actually getting along with Winklebottom. He is pretending to be the Secret Service. He's even like wearing the sunglasses and stuff. And Winklebottom's the president. He pretends like, oh, he's going to dive in front of him to take a bullet, but then he winds up knocking over Winklebottom and breaking his ear. And so he brings it to Hank in the garage and it's like, oh, Dad, it's broken. Can you fix it? And Hank knows he can fix it. He just needs to get like some epoxy and glue the ear back on and everything's fine. But now he's like, oh, I have an escape. I have an out to get rid of Winklebottom. So he's like, oh, there's nothing that can be done, Bobby. This thing is broken for good. And Bobby's freaking out because she's like, oh, she loved Winklebottom and now she's gonna get so mad and Mom's gonna kill me. And Hank's like, oh, this might be good for her though. I think she's getting too attached. Don't worry, I'll take care of everything. And so at nighttime, they're driving around trying to find like you know, I guess a garbage can in the neighborhood where they could drop Winklebottom. But Bobby's not, keen on anything like, oh, the lights are on at this house, or oh, this house, the driveway is empty. They could pull in any time. And Hank's like, okay, I'm gonna just do it. And then he grabs the Winklebottom. He tries to put it into the garbage can, but then like an old lady comes out and it's like, "Oh, Agnes, is this you?" And then Hank runs out. They go to the woods and dig a shallow grave for Winklebottom, put him in there, and then Hank proceeds to drive over the hole with his truck to crush it, and then he backs up and drives over it again. Uh, so they make it work, but they swear each other to silence and just like we're never going to talk about this again. The next morning, Bobby is nervous, but Hank is fine. And I guess they said that they were doing miniature golf, and Peggy's like, "Oh, how's miniature golf?" And since that's the alibi, Bobby has like re just like memorized the entire story and repeats it verbatim, like, "Oh, Dad scored 300 par, and it was great," and, things like that. Peggy goes outside and she's upset because she thinks she's lost Winklebottom. Sally, the Kathy from earlier, walks by and she's like, "Oh no, you guys are too stressed. I'm gonna call the cops." And Hank's like, "Oh no, no." It's like, "Oh, don't worry, Hank. Sally's here to take care of things."
Doesn't she call him
Uh,
hysterical? She's like, "You're hysterical."
yep, that's right. She's like, "Oh, Hank, you're hysterical. Don't worry, Sally's here to take care of everything." And sure enough, the cops come by and they ask questions like, "So is Winklebottom his first or last name?" "No, it's just Winklebottom." It's like, "I'm sorry, I just try to be thorough." And you know, the cops pretty much like, honestly, it's probably just teenagers who stole it. And quite frankly, you're probably never going to see it again. And even if you do, you probably aren't going to want it. So cops are just like, that's it. As the cop walks by back to like the B plot, he sees Joseph doing donuts without like a helmet or any protective gear in the middle of the street. And you think the cop's going to condemn him, but the cop walks by and it's like, "Hey, that's some fancy writing you're doing there." And then he drives off. The next day, Hank is, doing his thing, taking care of the lawn while he's singing the Green Acres theme. And he looks inside the house and he sees Peggy, and Peggy is sad and upset. And that's making Hank a little upset too. So he walks in and he tries to say, "Oh, it was just a gnome." And she was like, "Oh, well, propane's just a stupid gas." And, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to take it out on you, but I just never got praised for the house or anything, and this was the first time I felt like I was getting praised." And now Hank's just really feeling bad, and he goes to Bobby and says, "I'm going to come clean." And Bobby's upset. It's like, "Hey, we had a deal. We weren't going to talk about this," but Bobby says he'll take the heat entirely. Like get Bobby off, off the. So yeah, it's funny. She's just so. I mean, not funny, like ha ha funny, but how she's just so destroyed over the loss of that thing, of the Winklebottom.
I like how the cops took it really serious too. Like they were like, "What if we find it? You probably don't want it back." They really were like,
Yeah,
"These things, these things happen a lot, ma'am."
yeah. I think. Well, realistically, yeah. I mean, teenagers steal a bunch of random stuff. Teenagers, adults, a lot of people will just steal junk off of your lawn or whatever. So But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I kind of, in a sense, I kind of feel bad for her because it's something she liked, but at the same time, it's like, okay, it just happens. You kind of got to accept it for what it is. But yeah, so Hank goes ahead and goes to Peggy and confesses that he took the gnome, and Peggy refuses to believe it because I guess she just doesn't want to believe that Hank would go and hurt her in that way. Which, okay, fair. But so Bobby happens to be there too, and Peggy's like, "Oh, Hank must be covering for somebody." It's like, "Oh, it was Bobby. He was playing one of those weird little games and he broke it." And then Hank's like, "No, no, it was me. I put him in a shallow grave and crushed him." And Peggy just refuses to believe and grounds Bobby for a week. Bobby is mad and he's sent to his room, and he has he has dinner brought into him by Hank, but Hank sneaks in a pudding because he's like, "Oh, I know you didn't do it. You shouldn't be punished and stuff." And Bobby's just upset because he's in trouble for something. I mean, I guess technically he did break Winklebottom, but at the same time, Hank could have just fixed it, and Hank went to a whole nother level of let's destroy it and get rid of it and everything. But Hank's just like, I wish I could make things better, and Bobby's like, oh, you should go to that Germantown on I-35, New Hoffenheim, and Hank's not happy about it, and I think like that's supposed to be New Braunfels or like a or like I guess the in universe version of New Braunfels because that's the only German town off of I-35 I can think of off the top of my head. I was like, yeah, you could probably go there and find a replacement. So he does. And when he's there, he is like he goes into one of the shops and he's like, "Oh, do you have Winklebottom?" And the guy is like, "Oh, you might as well just ask me to move a rainbow. Winklebottom is rare." And Hank sees another gnome that kind of looks like Winklebottom, but it's not. His name was Figgleforth, and he's like, "Oh, Figgleforth is like Winklebottom, but not as rare or something." But Hank's like, "Oh, I'll buy it." But then there's a woman who's there who is like an actual gnome collector, and she's trying to take it, and she's like, "Oh, you probably don't even know what they eat or what their favorite food is and stuff." And Hank's like, "You know what? I hate gnomes. That's right, but my wife loves them, and this is what I need to get her in order for her to feel happy and stuff." And so after making that speech, the guy decides to sell it to the woman instead, but her credit card's declined, and Hank offers cash, so he winds up getting it. And it's funny because as he leaves, the guy says, "Oh, come back and see us again," and Hank's like, "Yeah, no."
You didn't say the best part of that part, which was he wasn't talking to Hank. He was talking to Fickleforth.
That's right. He wasn't talking to Hank. He was talking to Figgleforth, and then he was like, "I wasn't talking to you. I was talking to Figgleforth. I completely forgot that part."
I love that part. I also love when the lady's like, he doesn't even know what it means when a gnome shaves their mustache, but not their beard. I,
Which
oh man.
I'm kind of curious if that. I should look that up later if that's like an actual thing.
I want to go to that shop. I want to meet these. Like, I feel like that's a podcast right there. Like, the life of these people.
I kind of want to check it out too. Well, like maybe next time I'm in Austin, I'll go to
Go to
New
Braunfels.
Braunfels and see if they got that, or Fredericksburg and see if they've got stuff like that. But you can get a lawn gnome there probably.
Oh yeah, let's do it. We can make content. Life is we need to make more content, so we can do that.
Perfect. At the yard, Hank puts down the Fickleforth and gives Peggy the adoption papers, and she ungrounds Bobby. She still fully believes Bobby was the one who was in who caused all the problem, but now she's happy and ungrounds it. But she's like, the cops made a good point. There are a lot of teenagers, and it's probably dangerous to keep it here. Maybe we should keep it inside. And Hank still loves that idea because he's just like, oh yeah, yeah, let's keep him inside. But then we see in the next scene that he's like on the dresser in the bedroom, and so as Hank's getting ready to get out of his jeans and his clothes for the day, he sees he sees Winklebottom, and he's like, or no, I'm sorry, not Winklebottom. He sees Figgleforth, and then he just goes into the closet and changes there. So I mean, I guess everything ends well in the end. I mean, maybe Figgleforth is still valuable and worth something. Also, Figgleforth is probably newer because she bought him from a shop versus from an old lady's estate sale. So maybe he's Figgleforth is a little more what's the word I'm looking for? A little more mint than Winklebottom. So kind of all worked out.
I mean, though I think Winklebottom was worth a lot. The way that guy was talking, those people know lawn gnomes.
I guess he. I mean, yes, he definitely knows. There is no doubt about that. He's clearly dedicated his whole life to it. So I'm not in the same boat as Hank. I don't care about like I wouldn't if he had a lawn gnome in the yard, I probably wouldn't even notice it. Let's put it that way.
Well, I mean, the people were calling it the house with the gnome, so people
I
were paying
guess.
attention.
I don't know. I think Hank was blowing it way out of proportion.
I will say though, I do think when everyone's lawn is very identical, it's easy to see like the variations because I feel like at least the four of them, Hank, Bill, Dale, and Boomhauer, probably have a similar lawn care regiment.
I mean, I do think they do. To a degree, I mean, there's been many episodes where they talk about how terrible Bill's lawn is, including this one. So, I think they have the same basic knowledge, but in terms of dedication, they have different like I guess things. Like Hank clearly loves his lawn. I feel like I feel like Dale probably doesn't as much. Like I think he cares about it, but we've seen episodes where he just doesn't take care of his lawnmower or anything like that. So, and he's even said like, "Oh, his lawn is terrible compared to Hank's." So, I don't know. I guess it can go both ways.
Yeah, but they all did go to that. I mean, there was an episode where they went to like a lawn care expo, I believe.
That's true. They do.
But I mean, we all can't be Hank. I do wish it would have been nice if they kept was it Figgleforth?
Yeah,
If they would have kept Figgleforth in the lawn, and then that would have been a cool Easter egg from then on out. Figgleforth is always in the lawn
yeah.
because we never see it again, I
I
believe.
don't think we see him again. No. Which I mean, honestly, is common when it comes to cartoons or even adult cartoons. There's like no continuity between episode one and episode two, but we should have at least seen him again.
Maybe I will get a lawn gnome.
You should. You should have definitely get along gnome.
Okay, that's it. I'm doing it, guys.
I mean, I have a yard. I might as well get one too. I don't know what kind I'll get. Um, I don't know. Maybe there is a Fickleforth or a Fickleforth equivalent out there.
I think I'm just
Now
gonna
I'm actually
Amazon
curious.
mine. Well, unless I wait,
Do it.
maybe we will take a trip to New Braunfels. We'll see. Maybe that's the way to go. Maybe I need to be on a journey of some sort, and then the gnome comes to me. You know, like we don't choose the gnome chooses you.
Have you ever actually have you spent much time in New Braunfels or Fredericksburg or any of the German Hill Country in Texas?
I want to because I want to do Oktoberfest there, but other than just going to Schlitterbahn, not really.
I Let me think. I mean, obviously, I haven't been there in a long time. I don't live in Texas anymore. But I'd go every once in a while. It was a nice, like, way to get away. It wasn't, like, obviously, it wasn't the best place ever. Like it's kind of boring, and I wouldn't say it's boring, but it's like once you've been there, and it's not like, oh, there's so many new things I'm going to see if I go this time. But at the same time, it's still fun. It's a good way to kill an afternoon or something.
I have to figure out. You're gonna have to let me know what to do there then. If I go,
Oh, I there's the things that exist there probably don't that when I used to go there probably don't exist anymore. It's been that long.
lawn gnomes on Amazon are like $20+. I don't know if I'm ready to put that much money into a lawn gnome. I did find one that's
I could
smoking a
put
big joint though.
They have one.
Yeah. Oh, and it's only $8. Well, maybe that's the
There you
one.
go. That's the one. That's the one. But yeah, I mean, I like the episode. I definitely like that one quote towards the beginning about. I mean, I've used that line at work where I've just been like, who would do drugs when they can just, and then I don't know, insert something here, just you know, deploy a go binary or it's just something random like that. I use that quote all the time. I don't know. Hank's just kind of boring too. That's one thing that the episode seems to really highlight to me is that he's just no fun. Like, come on. I guess like I okay, I get it. It's weird to him and something, but come on, it's just I don't know. Come on. Why does he have to be so boring?
Is Hank boring? He just committed a murder of a lawn gnome this
That's
episode.
true.
And then he had
This is
like
one of the
the greatest, like, I mean, a too in depth alibi cover story to go along with it.
That's right. Bobby had that memorized. So I wonder how many times wonder how many times he made him go through it before like he made sure, okay, cool. You got it.
Yeah, I don't know. This is the dark side of Hank. I also love um, how just like Peggy blames Bobby all the time, and she's like, "You're doing one of your strange games or like silly games," and how she was like, "Oh, I knew it was your idea, Hank," and you're trying to give the credit to Bobby.
I think it was just because she was wanting to
Not believe it was Hank.
it makes sense. Yeah, I think she doesn't want to believe that Hank would do that to her, like how much she loved it and everything, and that Hank would get jealous and break it or something like that. And so, like in her mind, even though Hank was like, "No, I broke it" or whatever, she had to just create this universe where, like, oh no, Hank didn't break it. He's just covering for Bobby, who was being weird and broke it.
Yeah, but this is just like a fun little like silly episode. It's just a easy watch. Nothing crazy happens in it. Nothing life changing, but it's just fun seeing almost like a self contained Hill story because it's like I don't. There is no like B story, is there?
The closest thing to a B story is like Joseph and how he's always riding the motorbike. But yeah, that's pretty much the closest thing to a B story in that whole episode.
Yeah, and it felt like there was going to be a point where they thought Joseph did it to me when I first watched this episode.
True, it would have been very easy for them to just like say, "Oh, he drove into it and cracked it" or something like that.
Yeah, but yeah, just a fun self-contained um, Hill family episode. There's a few of them, and I just like an easy watch. You just watch it and then you enjoy it.
And just how ridiculous it is too makes it funny. Well, cool. I think that's all I got for this episode. What about you?
Yep.
Well, great. Well, next episode, we are going to be doing the final Shin Salt. We're going all the way back to season 2. And so we'll catch you on that one in the next episode. Until then, I'm Jason.
And I'm Jimmy.
Bye.
Bye.